She didn't come to Korea looking for answers. She came looking for work. But some doors open things you never planned to find. And some houses already know your name. Let's dive into it. Some doors don't just open. They take you somewhere you were never supposed to leave. Camille didn't want to go to Korea. She had never thought about Korea, never studied the language, never watched the dramas, never imagined herself anywhere near that part of the world. But desperation has a way of expanding your map. She was 26 years old, sitting in a small apartment in Atlanta with 3 unpaid bills on the table, her mother's hospital invoice on top of the pile, and exactly $412 in her bank account. She had applied for 17 jobs in 6 weeks. 14 rejections. 2 that never called back. 1 that offered her $8 an hour with no benefits. She sat at that table for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and clicked on an ad she had been ignoring for days. Premium domestic staff placement. International positions available. Competitive salary. Housing included. The agency was called Cornerstone Staffing. The position was in Seoul, South Korea. Private household. 1-year contract. The salary made her breath catch. She stared at the number for so long her eyes watered. Then she looked at her mother's hospital bill again. Then back at the screen. She applied before she could talk herself out of it. 3 weeks later she was on a plane. She didn't tell many people. There wasn't much to tell. Her mother cried softly when she hugged her goodbye at the door. Not the loud kind of crying, but the quiet kind that lives behind the eyes and only escapes when someone you love is walking away from you. "Call me the moment you land," her mother said. "Every day, Mama," Camille promised. She didn't know then that her mother was already carrying a secret that would make that goodbye far heavier than either of them understood. She just picked up her suitcase and left. Seoul received her with cold air and gray skies. The agency driver who picked her up from the airport was a small, quiet man who spoke very little English. He handed her a card with the household rules printed in both Korean and English. She read it in the car. "You will address the family as sir or madam at all times. You will not speak unless spoken to in formal spaces. You will not use your phone during working hours. You will not enter any room on the 3rd floor. You will remain invisible." That last line stayed with her. Remain invisible. She looked out of the window at the city moving past her. Bright lights, clean streets, everything unfamiliar. She folded the card and put it in her coat pocket. She was good at being invisible. She had been practicing her whole life. The Lim family mansion appeared at the end of a long private road like something from a film she hadn't paid to watch. It was enormous. Stone walls, iron gates, perfectly trimmed hedges lining both sides of the entrance like soldiers standing at attention. Every window lit from within warm gold against the cold gray evening. It looked like power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. Camille stepped out of the car with her suitcase and stood at the gates. The wind cut through her coat immediately. She tightened it around herself. A woman was already waiting inside the gates. Sharp posture, dark uniform, eyes that assessed Camille in approximately 3 seconds and found her wanting. "You are the new placement from Cornerstone," she said. Not a question. "Yes, Camille Davis." The woman's expression didn't change. "I am Mrs. O, head housekeeper. You will follow my instructions at all times. You will learn quickly and cause no disruption." A pause. "We have never had a foreign placement before. I want you to understand that this household runs on precision, not effort. Precision." Camille nodded. "Good," Mrs. O said. "Follow me." The gates opened, and Camille walked in. The inside of the mansion was everything the outside promised. White marble floors so clean they reflected the chandeliers above like still water. Tall ceilings, wide corridors, artwork on every wall that looked like it cost more than her entire building back in Atlanta. Silence everywhere, the expensive kind. Other staff moved through the halls quickly and quietly, eyes down, steps practiced. 2 of them glanced at Camille as she passed. She caught the look, curiosity first, then something less generous. She kept walking. Mrs. O showed her the servant quarters. A small but clean room at the back of the east wing. A single bed. A small window. A shared bathroom down the hall. "You begin tomorrow at 5:30, Mrs. O said from the doorway. "Rest tonight. You will need it." She left without waiting for a response. Camille sat on the edge of the bed. She looked around the small room. Then she took out her phone and called her mother. It rang 4 times before her mother picked up, voice thick with sleep and medication. "Baby, you landed?"
Mama.
"I'm here." A soft exhale on the other end. "How is it?" Camille looked around the small room again. At the single window. At the unfamiliar walls. "It's fine," she said. "It's going to be fine." She learned the rhythms of the mansion quickly. 5:30, wake. 6, clean the east corridor. 7, prepare morning service for the family dining room. 8, laundry collection from the upper floors. 10, deep clean rotation assigned by Mrs. O. Afternoon, whatever was left. Evening, whatever no one else wanted to do. She worked without complaint. She made no mistakes. And still, the mansion rejected her the way a body rejects something foreign. Started small. A maid named Suyun who would not share cleaning supplies without being asked directly. Another named Ji-hai who switched Camille's schedule assignments without telling her. Then watched with quiet satisfaction when Mrs. O reprimanded her for being in the wrong place. Small things. Deliberate things. Then there were the guests. The Lim household received visitors often. Wealthy Korean families. Business associates. Women in designer clothes who floated through the marble halls like they owned the air inside them. One afternoon Camille was polishing the side table in the main reception room when 2 women entered. They stopped when they saw her. One of them tilted her head slightly, the way a person does when something doesn't belong in a familiar picture. "Who is she?" the woman asked. Not to Camille. To the room. A junior maid nearby answered quickly. "The new placement, ma'am. From America." The woman's eyebrows lifted. "America." She said it the way someone says a word they find faintly ridiculous. Then she walked closer, slow and deliberate, until she was close enough that Camille could smell her perfume. "Do you understand where you are?" the woman asked softly. Camille continued polishing. "Yes, ma'am." "I don't think you do," the woman said. "This is not a place for experiments." The other woman behind her laughed quietly into her hand. Camille said nothing. Her hand kept moving in slow, careful circles across the table surface. The woman waited for a reaction, for tears, for something to confirm that she had landed her blow properly. She got nothing. That annoyed her more than anything else could have. She made a small sound in her throat and walked away. Camille kept polishing, but her jaw was tight, and her eyes were very, very still. She had been in the mansion 11 days before she saw him. She had heard about him, of course. The staff spoke about him the way people speak about weather, not because they wanted to but because it affected everything and ignoring it wasn't an option.
Lee Myun-sil,
the chairman's son, 30 years old, ran the family's business operations with a precision that made grown men nervous. Rarely at the mansion, he kept an apartment in the city, but when he came, the entire household felt it before he walked through the door. She was carrying a stack of fresh linens through the second-floor corridor when she heard footsteps that didn't sound like staff. Too certain, too unhurried. She stepped to the side automatically, the way she had trained herself to do in narrow spaces. He came around the corner and nearly walked into her. He stopped. She stopped. For 1 second, neither of them moved. He was taller than she expected. Dark suit, sharp jaw, eyes that didn't carry warmth the way most people's eyes did. They carried calculation instead. He looked at her the way you look at something that has appeared in a space where it has no business being. "Who are you?" he said. His English was precise, accented but clear. "Camille, the new placement from Cornerstone, sir." He looked at her for a moment longer than was comfortable. "You're in the wrong corridor," he said. She blinked. "Mrs. O assigned me to." "The family corridors are not part of your assignment," he said, flat, final, like he was correcting furniture that had moved itself. "Stay in the sections you've been given." He walked past her. She stood there holding the stack of linens. Her face was perfectly composed. But something behind her eyes burned quietly. That evening Madame Lim arrived. Camille had heard the name but not yet seen the woman. Junesio's mother. The chairman's daughter-in-law. She had been traveling, Paris then Tokyo, and her return shifted the atmosphere of the entire household in a way that even the walls seemed to feel. Camille was in the main hall arranging fresh flowers when the doors opened. The woman who entered was beautiful in the way that expensive, deliberate things are beautiful. Late 50s, perfectly dressed. Hair set precisely. Jewelry that caught the light without asking for it. She moved through the entrance like the mansion had been holding its breath waiting for her and could now exhale. Everyone bowed. Camille dipped her head respectfully. Madame Lim's eyes swept the room in one smooth arc, taking inventory the way a person does when they have been away from something they own and want to confirm nothing has changed. Then her eyes landed on Camille. They stayed there. Not with the open curiosity the other women had shown. Not with the bored contempt of the guests. With something else entirely. Something that moved too quickly for Camille to name. Then it was gone. Madame Lim smiled. A thin, gracious curve of the lips, and turned to Mrs. O. "Everything looks well maintained," she said warmly. "Well done." She walked further into the house. But just before she disappeared around the corner she glanced back once. Camille. And Camille, who had been watching without appearing to watch, felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Later that night, Camille sat on the edge of her bed and called her mother. Her mother answered on the second ring this time. "Better day then." "How are you feeling, Mama?" "Oh, I'm all right, baby. Tired but all right." "How is Korea?" "Cold," Camille said. Then, "Mama, can I ask you something?" Have you ever been to Korea?" A pause. Small. Brief. The kind most people would miss. "No," her mother said. "Why would you ask that?" "No reason," Camille said. "Just curious." They talked for a few more minutes. Small things. Comfortable things. Then her mother's voice started to carry that medicated heaviness that meant sleep was coming. "Rest, Mama. Call me tomorrow." "Every day," Camille said. She hung up, and sat in the quiet of her small room, thinking about the pause. That small, brief pause. 3 weeks in, Camille had found her rhythm. She worked efficiently, stayed within her assigned areas. After Junesio's correction she made sure of that, and kept her interactions with other staff polite but minimal. She was invisible, exactly as the card had instructed. But something about the mansion kept pulling at her in ways she couldn't explain. It wasn't the grandeur. She had stopped being impressed by that within the first week. It was smaller things. The way the light came through the third-floor windows in the late afternoon. She had only glimpsed it once from the stairwell, but something about it felt familiar in a way that made no sense. The smell of the garden after rain. The sound the main doors made when they closed. Small things, like echoes of something she had never actually heard. She mentioned none of this to anyone. The third floor was off limits. The card had said so. Mrs. O had reinforced it. Every member of staff treated that corridor with the careful avoidance of people who had been told firmly and did not need to be told again. Camille respected the rule. But one evening, returning from collecting linens from the upper guest rooms, she took a wrong turn in an unfamiliar corridor and found herself standing at the base of the third-floor staircase. She stopped. She should have turned around immediately. Instead, she stood there for a moment looking up the stairs. The corridor above was dim. A single wall light burning at the far end. Doors on both sides, all closed. And from somewhere up there, faint, almost imagined, the sound of wind moving through old wood. She stood at the bottom of those stairs for longer than she should have. Then she heard footsteps behind her and turned quickly. It was the chairman. She had seen him only twice before, both times from a distance. He was an older man, mid-70s she guessed, with silver hair and a stillness about him that felt less like peace and more like a man who had learned to carry something heavy without letting it show. He stopped when he saw her. His eyes went to the staircase, then back to her. She bowed quickly. "I apologize, sir. I took the wrong corridor. I was just leaving." He didn't respond immediately. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. Not anger. Not suspicion. Something quieter than either of those. "The flowers in the East Hall," he said finally, in careful English. "You arranged them." She blinked slightly. "Yes, sir. My wife used to arrange them the same way," he said. "Gardenias at the center." A pause. "She liked gardenias," he added, almost to himself. Then he seemed to return from wherever that thought had taken him. "Be careful with the upper corridors," he said quietly. "It's easy to get lost." He walked past her. She watched him go. Then she looked back up at the third-floor staircase once more, and walked away. It was on a Tuesday 31 days into her placement that everything began to shift. She had been assigned to do a deep clean of the chairman's private study while he was out for the day. Mrs. O had given her a precise list of what to clean and what not to touch. She followed it carefully. The study was a serious room. Dark wood. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A desk that had the look of a surface where real decisions had been made for decades. Family photographs on one wall, formal portraits, business gatherings, celebrations she had no context for. She worked steadily. Then, near the bottom drawer of the reading cabinet beside the window, her cloth caught on something. She looked down. A drawer, slightly open. She pushed it gently to close it. It resisted. Something inside was blocking it. She shouldn't have looked. She knew she shouldn't have looked. She looked. Inside the drawer, pushed to the back like something that had been placed there to be forgotten, was a single photograph. Face down. She hesitated. Then she reached in and turned it over. A woman, dark-skinned, young, mid-20s maybe, standing in the garden of this mansion in summer light, laughing at whoever held the camera. She wore a simple yellow dress. Her hair was natural, pulled back loosely. She looked relaxed and happy and completely at home in a place that was very far from wherever she came from. Camille's vision narrowed. Because the woman in the photograph was her mother, 20 years younger, healthy, laughing, standing in this garden. Camille's hands were not steady anymore. She turned the photograph over. On the back, in faded ink, 2 words and a date. Grace, summer, and a year that was 23 years ago. She put the photograph back exactly as she found it. She finished cleaning the study. She walked back to her room. She sat on the bed, and she called her mother. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Her mother answered. "Camille, you all right? You don't usually call at this time."
Mama.
Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Silence on the other end. "What is it, baby? Did you ever work in Korea?" The silence this time was not small. It was long, and heavy, and full of 23 years of something Camille had never been given access to.
Mama.
"Camille, did you work in the Lim family mansion?" A sharp intake of breath on the other end, like something had been pressed against a wound. "How do you?" Her mother's voice broke slightly. "How do you know that name?" "Because I am standing inside it, Mama." Camille's voice was very still. "I have been standing inside it for 31 days. Nothing. Complete silence." Then her mother said, quietly, carefully, like a woman placing down something she had been holding for 2 decades. "Camille, there are things I should have told you a long time ago. Then tell me now." Another long pause. "Not like this," her mother whispered. "Not over the phone. Please come home and I will tell you everything."
Mama.
"Please." Camille closed her eyes. "Tell me one thing," she said. "Just one. And I will wait for the rest." Her mother was quiet for so long Camille thought she had lost the call. Then, "You were not born in Atlanta." The room felt very small suddenly. Where was I born? But the call dropped. Bad signal. Or bad timing. Or the universe deciding that was enough truth for one night. Camille sat in her small room in a Korean mansion, with her mother's photograph face down in a drawer 30 meters away, and a question she had been living inside her whole life without knowing it. She didn't sleep that night. Camille tried to call her mother back 6 times. Each time it went to voicemail. She sent 3 messages. No response until early morning. A single text that read, "I'm okay. I'll explain everything. Please be careful, baby. Be very careful. Be careful. Not don't worry. Not I'll call you soon. Be careful." Camille read that message 4 times. Then she got up, got dressed, and went to work. She was different after that morning. Not visibly. She still moved through the mansion with the same quiet efficiency. Still kept her eyes down in formal spaces. Still spoke only when spoken to. But now she was watching. Really watching. The way the staff behaved around Madame Lim versus the chairman. The locked doors. The 3rd floor nobody discussed. The way certain conversations stopped when she entered a room. Not because of her specifically, she had decided, but because of what she might overhear. And she watched Madame Lim. Because something about the way that woman had looked at her on the first night, that flash of something quickly buried, had not left Camille's mind. It was the old woman who broke first. Her name was Auntie Bongsoon. She was not actually anyone's aunt. It was simply what the younger staff called her out of habit and affection. She had worked in the Lim household for over 30 years. She was small and quiet and moved through the mansion like she was part of its architecture. She had been staring at Camille since the first week. Not rudely. Not with the hostility of the other staff. With something more unsettling than hostility. Recognition. Camille had noticed it and filed it away. She was good at filing things away. But one afternoon she was alone in the lower kitchen preparing afternoon tea service, and Auntie Bongsoon came in and stood beside her without saying anything for a long moment. Then, "You look like her." Camille kept her hands moving.
I'm sorry.
"The woman who was here before." Auntie Bongsoon's voice was very quiet. "Grace." Camille's hands stopped. She turned slowly. The old woman was looking at her with an expression that carried the particular weight of someone who has kept a secret for so long that keeping it has become its own kind of suffering. "You knew her," Camille said. Not a question. "She was kind," Auntie Bongsoon said. "Kinder than she needed to be in a house like this. She worked for the chairman's wife, the first wife, before she passed. They were very close." A pause. "And then one night she was gone. Nothing. Just gone." "Why?" Camille asked. The old woman looked at her for a long moment. "You should ask Madame Lim that question," she said softly. Then she picked up a tray and walked out of the kitchen. Camille asked no one anything. Instead, she listened harder. She started paying attention to when Madame Lim's mood shifted. What triggered it? Who she watched most carefully in a room? What topics made her voice go slightly flat beneath its warmth? And she discovered 3 things. 1. Madame Lim watched the chairman with the particular vigilance of someone monitoring a situation they needed to control. 2. She was the reason the 3rd floor remained locked. Not the chairman. Not house rules. Her. 3. Every time Camille came within a certain proximity of the chairman, Madame Lim found a reason to redirect one of them. Small. Subtle. Almost undetectable. Almost. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Camille was polishing the corridor outside the main sitting room when she heard voices inside. The door was not fully closed, just barely open, a thin line of sound escaping. She recognized Madame Lim's voice immediately. The other voice was someone she didn't know, lower, a man, speaking in rapid Korean. She understood perhaps 1 word in 10, but she understood the tone. Urgency. Alarm. And underneath both of those, fear. Then she heard something that needed no translation. Her name, Camille, said by Madame Lim, in a voice stripped of all its careful warmth. Camille kept her cloth moving on the wall. Her face showed nothing, but her heart was beating very fast. That night she video called her mother. Her mother looked worse than the last call. Thinner, more tired. But her eyes were alert in the way they got when she had made a decision. "I've been thinking about what to tell you," her mother said. "And how?" "Just tell me," Camille said. "Whatever it is." Her mother looked at her through the screen for a long moment. Then she began. Thank you for watching. Episode 1 ends here. Find out more about their story in Episode 2 coming up soon. If you enjoyed story, please don't forget to subscribe, like and share the video to others, and also leave your comments, thoughts, and suggestions. You can also tell us where you are watching from. We like to know you better.